Matters. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. You're in for a real treat today. We've got an hour-long program. The first half of the program will be joined by Representative Paul Seaton down in Juneau. Very busy man, really appreciative of the time he's taking to answer your and my questions about what is happening on certain House bills. Thank you for those of you that have participated and sent me emails and text messages. If there's something that strikes you during the course of the program you'd like to still weigh in, the way to do that is to send me a text message. The number, 299-7653, 299-7653, with your questions for Representative Paul Seaton. In the second half of the show, we'll be playing highlights from last night's Homer City Council meeting. I'll be describing to you what I think is the new front line, which is your front or backyard. Will depend on how you think about that. And we'll also be giving away throughout the course of the program Blackwater Bend Espresso coffee cards. So be sure to keep your dial here at either FM 100 or AM 620. I'm Chris Story, reminding you that Alaska matters, and so do you. Welcome back to Alaska Matters. I'm Christopher Story, along with Dave Webb, your engineer, broadcasting from KGTL AM 620 or FM 100. Along with me is Mr. Paul Seaton, Representative Paul Seaton. We'll get to Paul in just a moment. Again, taking your questions at 299-7653. Text only today, 299-7653. Already have quite a few questions on the books for Mr. Seaton, but not too late to get yours in now. First, let me send you out there to Blackwater Bend Espresso for free. You know, it's your gourmet headquarters. Every time you drive by, your car wants to pull in, whether you want coffee or not. It's gourmet espresso made with award-winning custom blended beans just for you, Blackwater Bend. Here's your question, and I'll send you out there for free. Giving away one coffee card right now. We'll do another one later. Here's the first one. The question is, of the state budget, the Alaska state budget of nearly $3 billion, what amount is for education on the Kenai Peninsula? On the Kenai Peninsula, education is what? 22 million, 66 million, or 118 million. Send me your answer now to 299-7653. Text only. Welcome to Alaska Matters, Paul Seaton.
Hey there, how you doing?
We are great. I want to go through this real rapid fire. First of all, let me just say, though, thanks for taking the time during the busy session to speak to me, and in so doing to your constituents here in the Homer Anchor Point area. Really appreciate that. And, of course, thanks for being down there and representing us and putting a hat on the peninsula.
Yeah, that's good. And the other thing is, I just want to let people know if they want to get the weekly update. You know, I do a weekly email newsletter, send out every Monday, and discuss everything that's coming up in the committees on which I serve, as well as any of the other hot and heavy items that are coming up. So anyway, They can sign up for that if they just give a call or send an email. Yeah,
I really appreciate knowing that too. And I'm on the list now and getting those. Very informative. And really, there's so much happening to condense it and consolidate it down into one newsletter like that is smart. So thank you for that. All right. Well, let's start with probably one of the most popular items, at least as posed to me, to ask you about is House Bill 80. And that, of course, is in the Resource Committee, I believe, and it's regarding wastewater from cruise ships, just to put that into a nutshell. And what I was told, now, several people said, well, here we go again. Paul's separating from the Republicans. What's going on? It's my understanding that you voted against it. But as I read this, I actually feel like more than voting against it, you attempted to amend it. So here's my question. What was your amendment? Is this a Republican-Democrat type thing, or is it just more of a fisheries or ocean type deal? And then Roger would like to know if they can dump in the Katchmack Bay. So you can take those in any order you choose.
Sure. Well, first of all, you know, most of these issues are not Republican, Democrat. They're, you know, who you represent and the constituents and protecting Alaska resources. So the House Bill 80 was allowed the DEC to basically override the voter initiative that put in place the water quality standards had to be met at the point of discharge by the large passenger vessels, cruise ships, the large ones. And that's been going for about 5 years now, and they've improved somewhat. There's been a technical team that's worked. And so anyway, the question now is they want to say, well, we can't meet the standard now, so just basically let us use mixing zones instead of that measuring our contaminants at the point of discharge.
Okay, can you just for me, what is a mixing zone in just a real nutshell? What's a mixing zone?
A mixing zone is if you got dirty water and you allow it to be put in other water, and then you measure at the outside of some perimeter and say that's the edge of the mixing zone, and if the water now meets the water quality standards at that edge after it's mixed with a whole bunch of water in a stream, or in this case we're talking about ocean water, then you measure the contamination at that point and say, okay, that's good enough, we've diluted it enough, and it'll meet the standards now. But
Okay. And this, again, primarily we're talking about chemicals that are used in the treatment of this wastewater, not discussing raw sewage. We're talking about the chemicals primarily.
Well, we're also talking ammonia, we're talking copper, which affects salmon, and other metals that are in the ships. And some of the ways they've been able to clean this up is they've replaced bronze impellers with titanium impellers that don't shed copper ions out into the water, and they've replaced copper pipes with plastic pipes. And so there's a bunch of ways you can do it besides just treatment plant.
Okay, well, what was your amendment to House Bill 80? What did you propose?
Well, the first amendment that I made was saying that, okay, we've got 6 critical habitats that the state has established in different parts, including Ketchimak Bay, and the amendment was saying that DEC could not allow the cruise ships to discharge their above Alaska standards water into Ketchimak Bay using a mixing zone.
Here's my final question on this House Bill 80, unless you want to go on about it. I don't understand who could oppose what you just said. I just don't understand it unless it's the sheer fact of the matter is that if the cruise ships are saying, hey, we can't afford to operate in your waters then, and they're going to leave, I just don't understand who could oppose what amendment you just offered to that.
Well, I don't know why either, because, the thing is that the legislature has put in these special areas that said, okay, these are critical habitats. There's only 6 of them, Ketchimak Bay, Eisenbeck Lagoon, Round Island where the walruses are, et cetera. And why they would want the ability to discharge into those areas, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to House Bill 24. This is the Stand Your Ground bill, essentially. Where do you stand on that? In essence, it just says that it's the criminal, if it, as it were, has the obligation to flee, not you. So if you're armed and you're not at home, and let's say you're standing outside of a movie theater somewhere and you're being approached, it's no longer your obligation to flee, but it's the criminal's obligation, and you can stand your ground and fire upon them or protect yourself. Where do you stand on that, House Bill 24?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, because right now, you can't, you can defend yourself without having to retreat. It's not flee. It's without having to retreat or back up or do anything in your home. It can be a police officer in a building where you work. This extends it to any place the person is.
Right.
And so the testimony last year, after I voted for it in the House, I saw the testimony in the Senate where the district attorney from Anchorage was saying, please don't pass this, because now we don't have any way to file criminal charges against gang members who get in a fight, because both of them can say, well, I didn't have to move because I was defending myself because I thought that I might be in jeopardy. So it's a little more complicated than that. I think that it's always best to have people negotiate and work towards lessening aggression and impacts. And unfortunately, what we've seen in a number of places is this idea that, okay, you can just use lethal force if you just feel like, oh, I might be intimidated here. That's probably not going to be helpful to most people in Alaska.
I was outside of a hotel, and a drunk approached me. I don't know whether he's drunk or on something, and I didn't really stop and ask, but I had my family get in the car, lock the doors, and I pulled out my gun. And outside of a hotel room, outside of a hotel in a parking lot, I probably, had I been forced to use my weapon, probably, I guess without this legislation, may have been in the wrong. Maybe I'm not understanding it, but I...
Oh, no. When you took your family out of the situation, you moved out and got into your car, that is, you were retreating.
No, I did not. I put them in the car, locked the doors, and I stood my ground with my gun.
Right.
So that's where I probably, well, okay, touche. We'll just move on from that one. But I would just love to tell the Anchorage District Attorney just to lock up all the gang members, and then we don't have to worry about it. All right, Gary wants to know about House Bill 112. That would repeal the film production tax credit. Where do you stand on that? Is Alaska getting the bang for the buck out of the film tax credit?
Well, that just got modified last year to say that, okay, you can't just take this money for, top executives or for big-name artists. It had to be couldn't exceed the amount that you paid to employees that were Alaskans. So I'm not sure where this is coming from. We just modified it last year to tighten it up. It hasn't come to any committees yet that I'm on, so I haven't seen it.
Okay. All right. But do you think, what about the question Gary wants to know, do you think that film tax is working? Are we getting some jobs and income and notoriety? What are we getting out of that money spent, do you think?
Well, we've been definitely getting a lot of advertising for Alaska if you were trying to recruit, visitors to it.
That's true.
Now that it's tightened up so that it had to be for the Alaskans that were employed was a credit, not for the high name,
right.
The big star.
Right.
That was a big help. So,
okay. Well, that's good. I did not realize it had been modified, so I'm glad we got that out there. How about guns in schools? This would be Representative Lynn's House Bill 55. That would, and I'll probably underestimate the description, but this is my take on it, is that it would allow full-time non-felon employees of the school to keep and bear arms on their person under certain rules and circumstances. And what say you?
Well, generally it's probably not a good idea. Even though it sounds like a good idea, most of the time teachers, which are probably going to be most of the people that would be authorized, they've got to have the gun either on their person or in their desk or something else. Could make guns much more accessible to a student or something else that really got mad and flew off the handle, and what's going to happen. And so I'm not sure. We haven't had the testimony on it, but that's my concern, having been around school situations. I haven't been on one where there's been a shooting.
Right.
I don't ever want to be around one where there's a shooting.
No.
And the question is whether the fact that there are going to be guns in the school is going to be a positive or a negative. That's something that, really hasn't been resolved yet.
Yeah, no, I've been getting a lot of pushback on that relative to the conversations I'm having. People saying, hey, maybe a solution is an armed guard or an off-duty policeman, but not so sure about arming the employees. Well, much more to come with Representative Paul Seaton. I know that Chrissy wants to know about Frankenfish, and there's other things here to include House Bill 69 and the gas line. So much more. Don't go anywhere. Coming up back here on Alaska Matters. You're listening to Alaska Matters. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. With me today is Representative Paul Seaton from Juneau. Very busy Representative Paul Seaton. We've talked about guns in schools. We've talked about film tax credit and other things. Chrissy would like to know about Frankenfish and your position on farmed fish in Alaska and what exactly is going on there.
Sure, and we just got out of the Fisheries Committee, which I chair, and we moved that, had a hearing on HCR 5, which is the Frankenfish or the genetically modified fish, and we passed that out of committee today with everybody approving, so we had some really good testimony on it, asking the federal government not to allow those genetically modified fish, and if they do, that they must be labeled with, so that people know what they're buying.
Right. And where would they be? Would this be like at the hatchery they're injecting them, or where would this take place? We're just talking about farming in general or elsewhere, not in Alaska.
You're talking about for the Frankenfish? Or
yes.
Genetically modified?
Yeah, correct.
One of the procedures was they had to be in tanks. They couldn't be raised out in the ocean.
Got it.
But that's still, we've had tsunamis and earthquakes and everything else, and so you can get releases of fish that could then, about 5% of the fish, they're supposed to be sterile, but about 5% of them can breed. So It might not take much to go from there. You know how it is. I
do. Okay, let's talk about and one more question on that. That's getting bipartisan support, I suspect.
Absolutely.
Okay. How about House Bill 69? And again, I'll probably frame this simplistically, so expand where you need to. But essentially, Representative Mike Chenault, the House Speaker, has proposed to make it a criminal act to impose new federal regulations on firearms.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's going to be a hearing on that bill. Could be a request for a hearing, but we are getting to the positions of criminalizing federal police officers FBI and citing them for Class A misdemeanors and things for enforcing federal laws. And I think that it's probably going to violate the U.S. Constitution very definitely. So I don't think that that's moving forward at all.
Oh, really? Okay. So do you think it was, obviously I'm not going to ask you to predict what Representative Chenault was thinking, but was it maybe just running something up the flagpole to make a point?
Well, I think it's a kind of a shot across the bow against federal overreach and gun legislation in general and that kind of thing. I think it's a statement saying, hey, we don't want those federal new gun regulations enforced in Alaska.
I had the opportunity about 2 or 3 weeks ago to host a program on the Second Amendment, and we took some calls, and one caller said that he had contacted you or your office directly asking you to support this. What reach or what response have you had regarding this particular, either House Bill 69 with the federal regulations or 55 allowing guns in schools? Have you had the public coming to you in any particular number or percentage that for or against these bills?
Oh, I think in the schools ones, we've probably had about, I don't know, I'd say 2 to 1 emails and comments against it, maybe more than that, but I'm just, I didn't add them up here. But in this one, we have had very little comment. I think people understand it's mostly a comment, not a bill that, at least I don't think that it's a bill. I mean, it's, when things are that constitutionally challenged, should I say,
right.
They generally are there for a purpose of making a statement.
It seems right now we're in such a heightened, divisive time in our country that states' rights are really coming to the forefront, and perhaps that House Bill 69 was a statement relative to states' rights. But is there a lot of discussion among your peers and so forth that it's time for states, the individual states, and Alaska in particular, to take a stand and start really enforcing the sovereignty of the state of Alaska?
Well, I think, the Second Amendment is right in the U.S. Constitution. It's not so much in the state constitution, it's the U.S. Constitution. So whatever federal laws are passed are going to have to be consistent with the federal Constitution. So, I think it's an expression of people's frustration or people thinking that the laws may be overreaching. And
it just seems like it's so divisive. I've never seen a time in my lifetime, at least that I've been cognizant of watching politics, that it has been that way, and suddenly states' rights are sort of looking scarce. But okay, let's. Homer Woman wants to know about House Bill 92, aka the Lucy Lawless bill, one of my favorite actresses. Actually, I never watched that show, but I figured I had to say it. So, in other words, how do you define House Bill 92, and do you see it going anywhere to create, if I'm not mistaken, a felony out of these types of criminal mischief committed by interfering with an industrial operation?
Haven't really seen that one explored or defined yet, so
okay. I'm
not sure what the full parameters of that are. There's a lot of bills.
Yeah, well, no, I'm telling you, there's a ton of them.
We're dealing pretty hot and heavy with oil taxes.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's somebody else wanted to know about that. I believe it was Peggy wanted to know about oil taxes. Do you see this being solved this year? Can we both benefit the state coffers and provide incentives to producers? Is there an easy solution to this?
Well, I don't believe that the solution that has been put on the table by the administration is a solution, because what it does, it gets rid of both incentives. One incentive is a tax incentive that allows the individual companies, if they're making more than $30 per barrel profit, to buy down their tax rate by just investing in Alaska. And so it gets rid of that. That's progressivity, gets rid of that feature. And then it balances the loss in revenue there by getting rid of the tax credits that we give to people that invest on the North Slope. So getting rid of both aspects of incentives to invest in Alaska, I don't think is going to get us investment in Alaska. So
okay.
I've got problems with the administration bill on the basic philosophy of how they're trying to accomplish this.
Okay. And the solution, I guess, is just continuing to work with the legislatures, or do you see a solution that possibly...
I mean, I have a bill, House Bill 51, which is in there, and it changes the corporate tax rate, because right now we say that they're going to pay 9.4% corporate tax, but they really only pay about 6% corporate tax. So in every analysis, it looks like we're very uncompetitive with the other states. But if we would just have them pay their corporate taxes on the revenues they make from Alaska, less the expenses in Alaska, then they would be paying the same amount of money, but we would be 3% more, a third more competitive on the corporate income tax rate just by doing that. And then we need to eliminate that top 25% of the progressivity, which would be also help our competitiveness. And we can do those without really costing ourselves anything. So there's ways of doing things. It's just we have to get to the point where we do them.
Okay. Senator Machicki said on this very program that it would take, in his estimation, about $750 million to create the gas line off of the North Slope, the state gas line. I guess just, as quickly as possible, should we expend those state dollars, do you think, and will we?
Well, there's about a $400 million price tag for the pre-engineering and all that kind of stuff coming down there. So not quite sure where the 750 comes from, but
I think it was just a guess off the top of his head. Well, let's just call it $1 billion. Is it worth doing to get? I mean, Fairbanks is in a massive energy crisis with the cost of their gas and so forth. Is that something that we should look at as a state to spend, say, $1 billion, whatever the total price tag is?
Well, I think we need to definitely look at Alaska gas in a way that makes sense. The one thing that bothers me is that people are sometimes trying to rush as if we can solve our short-term problem with a pipeline, because it's going to take too long to build that pipeline. So we are either going to be finding a lot more gas in Cook Inlet or in the Nenana Basin, or we're going to be importing for a couple of years liquefied natural gas. I mean, people import liquefied natural gas. They were going to do it down south before they found all the shale gas. They're doing it all around the world, Japan, So on a short-term basis, and a more cost-effective basis, importing and regasifying liquefied natural gas is probably the short-term answer to that gap time before we could get a pipe built. And that, I mean, the idea of trucking liquefied natural gas down the highway, I forget how many trucks it is, but I think we're talking hundreds of trucks a day, is really a problem. I think probably building a pipeline from Cook Inlet north and supplying both ours and Fairbanks need on the short term with LNG, and then when the pipeline reaches Fairbanks and we just reverse the pipeline and bring it down to South Central, I think that makes probably a lot more sense in the real time frame that we're dealing with.
Okay, quickly, just because we're just running out of time, and I want to give you an opportunity to close this out here, but Janie is real concerned about homeless teenagers on the peninsula and cites that there's approximately 37 homeless teens and wants to know if there's anything that could be done to help offset some of the costs that families that take in these homeless teens. Where would she go? What should she do to explore this with either you or somebody in the appropriate committee in Juneau?
Well, that would be Health and Social Services down here, and that's Representative Higgins. But
okay.
She can also call my office. They can just call the local number, the 235-2921, and it directly connects down to our office here, and we can help her and talk about the issue in detail.
All right, Representative Paul Seaton, your final thought for those listening right now.
Well, just a lot of meetings, a lot of busy stuff going, trying to get all this stuff done in 90 days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, but encourage people to stay in contact and let us know what works and what doesn't work for them.
Oh, I've no doubt that they'll do that. Thank you so much, Representative Paul Seaton. Really appreciate your time and look forward to you being here again on Alaska Matters.
Good. Talk to you later then. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you so much. And he's so right about that 90 days. That's a short period of time, and we just scratched the surface. There's still the water rights that one of you wanted to know about water rights, and man, there's so much happening. And as I just said to Representative Seaton, that it is a divisive time in our country, and that seems to be boiling down to the state, to the borough, to the local governments and so forth. Anyway, it's an exciting time. Some people are saying, well, it's really a scary time in our country. You know what I say? I say it's an exciting time to be alive, to be awake, to be aware, and to be educated. And that's what this program's all about. When we come back after the top of the hour news break, we're going to share with you some highlights from last night's Homer City Council meeting. We'll answer our Blackwater Bend coffee question there. We had to mind better how much money are we spending on schools here on the Kenai Peninsula. The number may surprise you. Maybe because you think it's more. Maybe you think it should be more. I don't know. But we're going to have a great time here together, you and I. And I might even give away one more Blackwater Bend coffee card. I think I will. So we'll do that one. And then I've got one more idea, and it's regarding sewage. So I hope you've had lunch. We'll come back here on Alaska Matters. This is Alaska Matters. This is the second half of a very special edition of Alaska Matters, our full hour here for you today. And, of course, we were joined earlier in the program by Representative Paul Seaton. If you've got any comments or commentary you'd like to weigh in on what Representative Seaton had to say, shoot me a text message at 299-7653, 299-7653. I want to thank all the participants who did ask questions and comment during the broadcast, and I apologize for doing such rapid fire on all those House bills, but there's so many of them, and so many of you wanted them addressed. So I figured the best way to do it is just to put them out there on the table and let the representative speak to them, whether I agreed with his answers or not, whether you did or not. We got to hear from him, and that's what a representative democracy is all about, isn't it? I mean, we're a representative republic, and that's what we just did. So your job at this point is, if you disagree or you agree, is to support or challenge those ideas. Send me a text if you'd like to discuss them here on the broadcast, 299-7653. I want to thank Eric. Many people entered the contest, and of course had to pick one, and that turned out to be Eric. Eric knew that the state budget of nearly $3 billion allots $22 million for education on the Kenai Peninsula. $22 million. It's a lot of moolah. The total capital budget for the Kenai Peninsula from the state is $118 million. Infrastructure comprises just over $66 million. Education just over $22 million. Public safety, $26 million. Anchorage school budget is, just by contrast, Anchorage school budget is $91 million. Fairbanks school budget, $57 million. Interesting statistics. Now, so what do we want to do here? Oh, by the way, Anchor Point Chamber of Commerce has asked me to be the auctioneer at their fundraiser next Thursday. I hope to see a lot of you out there. 7 o'clock at the Chapman School, 7 o'clock to support the Anchor Chamber of Commerce, Anchor Point Chamber of Commerce. So we'll be having a fun auction. I don't know what the items are yet, but I'll tell you next Tuesday. But set it on your calendar. I guarantee we will have a good time. Also, not boys and girls. Who is this? Oh, big sisters, big brothers, looking for you to form a bowling team. They're doing free bowling, free pizza, raffle prizes, all kinds of great things to support your local Big Brothers, Big Sisters program. Great program, by the way. If you really want to do something on a local level, you want to get vocal, you want to act local, you want to impact the people of tomorrow, the kids of today, I tell you, it's through Big Brothers, Big Sisters program. I've been a huge supporter of this. Contact Susan if you're interested in either donating, participating in the bowl-a-thon, forming your own team. You just need 6 people. Select a team captain. I'm trying to put together a Story real estate team, and I'm trying to get my team around it, but I'm having a little challenge there. They're not bowlers, but it doesn't matter if you're a bowler or not. So 235-8397, 235-8397, or susan.kirn@bbbsak.org. Give her a call, 235-8397. Okay, so we've got a lot of things lined up here, and I wanted the Cotogno effect. You remember Don Cotogno, friend of the program, came on here about, 6 months ago, and he said something happens when you get elected. Your brains go out of your head. Something happens. And I thought from last night's Homer City Council meeting, this was probably the best example of the Cotogno effect. Hit it.
My last point, which is pressure from outside sources. I wish Instar or some other private group had come up to me and offered me tons of money to bring this resolution forward. But I can tell you, they did not. I wish Instar or some other private group had come up to me and offered me tons of money to bring this resolution forward.
Why would you say that? That was Bo Burgess. That was the bag man himself. The architect of the bag ban, Mr. Bo Burgess, obviously in his youthful enthusiasm for his new position of power at the city council, was making a facetious point. But really? Really? That's the way you're going to make it? I wish they had offered me cash. That's illegal. Obviously, he was being facetious, as was I, by pairing that with one of Dire Straits' classic tunes, maybe their only classic tune, Money for Nothing and Your Chicks for Free. I just thought that was great. At the risk of picking on young Bo, and I'm not, but I had to point that out, that was one of the most, when I heard that, I thought, man, he needs this. He needs this to happen on Alaska Matters tomorrow. All right, let's talk about sewage. This will be your opportunity to win one more. We have one more Blackwater Bend Espresso coffee card to give away. And I want it to go to you. Send me a text at 299-7653. Larry Sloan, citizen activist, if you will, an advocate for the citizenry here in Homer, proposed last night that if you asked 100% of the homeowner, well, let's just let Larry speak in his own words. You answer the question by texting it to me, would you or wouldn't you? And here's Larry. Let's get Larry now.
18.05, which is the proposal to provide the emergency funding, $10,500 for those 3 households who were severely impacted by the sewer system backup. I understand the city manager took the initiative on this, so I want to thank you for that. I think that's entirely the appropriate thing to do. I fully support this. I think it's a start, but only a start. I think that if you asked 100 household owners here in this city what their expectation would be if this condition happened to them, and I suspect that 100% of them would say, I would expect the city to make it good for me.
And what happened was that people woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning to a geyser of raw sewage in their home. Now, the city insurance company is saying that it was an act of God. They're not going to support it as far as paying out to those victims. Now, as Larry just mentioned there, to Walt's credit as city manager, who was just, by the way, awarded another 2-year contract, and we're attempting to find out what that is worth dollar-wise. But he did do the right thing in handing them each a check for $3,500. That was to cover their displacement and cover, what are you going to do in the middle of the night? You got to go somewhere, and you're covered in raw sewage. You got 3-4 inches of raw sewage in your home. Okay. Here's the question. Let's take a quick poll of Alaska Matters listeners, 299-7653. If you woke to a sewerage eruption in your home, be you a renter or an owner, would you expect the city to take responsibility for that relative to replacing or giving you some compensation for the items lost? Not just the dislocation for the interim, but actually reimbursing you for the damage done to the property as well as damage done to your personal property that happened to be in there. 299-7653, 299-7653. Would you or wouldn't you expect the city to compensate you for the damage done, regardless of what the insurance company is saying that it was an act of God? 299-7653. I want to send you out to Blackwater Bend for free, and we'll be back with more highlights from the Homer City Council meeting here on Alaska Matters. You're listening to Alaska Matters. I'm Christopher Story. You might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, it's after 1 o'clock. What's Chris doing on Alaska Matters after 1 o'clock on KGTL, AM, and FM? Well, we're having us a little party here. We're having a full-hour program because Representative Paul Seaton was kind enough to spend the first half hour with us. I'm kind enough to spend the second half hour here with you. I really count you as a friend. I hope you know that. I really do. I figured out last night we're getting answers to the question, by the way, the Larry Sloan question, which is, would you or wouldn't you expect the city to take care of the raw sewage that was emitted into your home in the form of what Dennis Hanschild referred to as a geyser, 3 o'clock in the morning, a geyser of feces and raw sewage in your home? Would you or wouldn't you, regardless of what the city's insurance company says, expect the city to step up and cover those costs? By the way, I've just completed the bowling team. We'll get back to the city council meeting in a moment. The bowling team for Story Real Estate for the Big Brothers Big Sisters has just been assembled. It consists of Dan and Amanda Metke, Chris and Tiffany Story, and Dave and Melanie Webb. Yes, we have a team, and we will prevail. I'm guaranteeing it. We are going to prevail. All right. So I said earlier that I figured out what's wrong with this country, and I could demonstrate it to you in mere seconds. All you need to do is hear what Assemblyman Smith said last night at the City Council meeting here in Homer. He was representing the Kenai Peninsula Borough. He is your representative and mine up in Binkley, up at Binkley Street for the borough. And here's what he said. He's taking this to Juneau with him. You need to know it and see if you agree with me that this is the reason we have $16 trillion in debt. Take it away, Mr. Smith.
If the state doesn't participate, it doesn't mean that the federal government doesn't spend the money. It just goes to another state.
Exactly. So because of that sentimentality, we have $16 trillion in federal debt. Think about that. If we don't get it, then it's just going to go to somebody else, regardless of the principle at hand. And you don't even know what he's talking about unless you listen to the meeting. And I'll tell you that in a moment. But just think about those words. Listen again. It's real quick. Won't take.
If the state doesn't participate, it doesn't mean that the federal government doesn't spend the money. It just goes to another state.
That's exactly right. He's hit the nail on the head. He has identified the problem with our federal budget, with the mindset of the federal government right now, state government and possibly local government, is simply that. Well, I'll illustrate this. What he's talking about. Well, let me just, in his own words, it's easier for him to say it than it is for me. I may interrupt him from time to time, but let's listen to some of this.
The state's expanding their Medicaid program. I may have said Medicare, but it's a Medicaid program.
Okay, so the state's expanding the Medicaid program essentially in alignment with the affordable, quote-unquote, Affordable Health Care Act. It allows for states to now expand their Medicaid program to include up to 138% of the federal poverty level. In other words, what we're doing, if we do this as a state, what we'll be doing is expanding the number of poor people. We're not actually changing their socioeconomic condition. We're not offering them a hand up. We're not saying that you can do it. You can start a business. We're going to get out of your way. We're going to stop doing stupid things like, seizing 95% of your private property in the name of protecting a stream or creek. We're not going to do things like, inhibit your ability to put up a temporary sign at your business without taking you to court. We're not going to do things like saying, you've got to buy the more expensive bag to give your customers because the cheap and expensive bags are killing sea otters, you heartless pig. We're not going to do those. We're not going to encourage Anwar to be open so that we can flood the state of Alaska with money. We're not going to do things like, tap into the $100 million that the Kenai Peninsula Borough is parking and investing for you. $100 billion with a B. We're not going to tap into that to start, maybe reducing some of the property taxes around here, making it a more affordable place to live. Now, that notwithstanding the idea that they're loaning the money to City of Homer and Kachemak City to expand the infrastructure that is the Instar gas line, that's a whole nother subject. My point is that why would we want to create another generation of dependence on the federal government, on Medicaid? Medicaid is a safety net, not a hammock. A safety net. Why would we want to increase that? Well, he goes on.
And currently, people can be eligible for Medicaid program if they're at 100% of the federal poverty level. And the Affordable Care Act allows an expansion to 138% of the poverty level, which would expand greatly the number of individuals that could qualify for Medicaid.
Exactly. Well, I'm not heartless. I've been in a position in my life. I'm going to tell you something. I've been in a position in my life early on, at the beginning of starting a business, A friend encouraged me and said, with the amount of money you're making, you qualify for this assistance program for daycare assistance. Oh, well, with both my wife and I working, that looked kind of tempting. And said, you know what? Okay. Kind of swallowed our pride, went down, signed up for some daycare assistance. We're not, 21 years old, something to this effect. And thought, okay, well, we'll try this out. Well, it was about a month and a half later, we both received an increase. Through our own efforts and our own merit, we received an increase at our respective employers' place of employment. And guess what we did? The first thing we did was just wash ourselves clean of that program. And so we went down, and that gal was running for House of Representatives. So these are the type of people that will end up in Juneau possibly, or end up in Washington, D.C. And we said, okay, we're done. We're good. We're off the program. Please take us off the list. Oh, well, you still qualify. Based on what you just told me, you still qualify. Yeah, but no, thank you. Well, you don't understand. And I'm quoting you. She said, you don't understand. You're going to impact and hurt other people, because if we don't expend what we wanted and projected for this year, we'll get less next year. To which I said, okay, what are you talking about? That was such an early, impactful lesson. And here you have Assemblyman Bill Smith about to go down to Juneau on behalf of you, and say to the state legislature that we would like for you to adopt this program where we increase the number of poor people in the state of Alaska. Do not hand them a ladder. Let's give them a shovel and dig themselves further into dependency and less creative, because it's the benefit of the collective. Hey, Dave, we need to take another break, don't we? Okay, we're going to do that, and we're going to play. I've got to get my blood pressure down. I've got to have some of this Blackwater Bend coffee. I don't know whether it's going to spike it or help it quell, but we'll be back with more here on Alaska Matters. Some nice, soothing Pink Floyd to come back from a high blood pressure moment. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. We're exploring dependency. Taxation, dependency, and what's wrong, in my estimation, with the country at the moment. I wish it lived only in Washington, D.C., but I'm afraid, friends, that it lives here in your backyard. The front line has become your backyard. I'm asking you to contact Assemblyman Smith. I'm asking you to contact your Homer City representatives, the Homer City Council, the mayor, Mayor Beth Wyeth, and say, please do not send a resolution to Juneau expanding the Medicaid program. Please do not expand the amount of dependency, crippling people that need help. We do not need as a society more people dependent. And I know that there's some listening that would say, well, you just don't care. And that's absolutely fundamentally wrong. I care. People that agree with me care. And what we would like to do, what I would like to propose, is that we take a concerted effort to stop messing around with people's private property, Mr. Assemblyman Smith. Stop taking 50 feet of people's property through the anadromous streams ordinance and saying that they are silly if they request an explanation as to why property owners weren't notified. I would like us to propose laws, or how about just let's repeal some laws. Let's do this. Let's repeal the Bridge Creek Watershed Protection District, which seized 95% of your private property. You get to pay 100% of the tax on it. You've lost use of 95% of your property in that district. Trust me, I know. I sold a piece of property shortly after that was adopted as law. I would like for us to begin really talking about the gas line, not in platitudes, really discussing the gas line as what's it going to take. Senator Peter Micicki's approach was it's going to take money. Okay, fine. We have money. The state of Alaska has money. We are not destitute. Let us build up our infrastructure. Stop expanding dependency. Stop expanding poverty. I feel for people that don't have health insurance. Trust me, I have not, most of my adult life, had health insurance. I do now. Guess what it is? Major medical. Guess what's happened to it since the passage of the quote-unquote Affordable Health Care Act? It has gone through the roof to a point at which I may not be able to afford to keep it on. I may not be able to justify the cost of it or afford the cost of it if it keeps going up. And every time it goes up, they send me a little note and say, well, in compliance with. in compliance with. It's new legislation, new regulation, new laws, people like Assemblyman Bill Smith that say, let's expand the Medicaid program because we can. And if we don't take advantage of it, it's just going to go to Florida or California. And guess what? There's microcosms of little people all over the country saying the exact same thing. And we have a bloated federal budget as a result of it. Nobody wants to take the poison pill of saying, speaking of poison pill, isn't that what our president suggested, that the woman that needed a pacemaker take is send her home with some pain pills? I mean, really, do we want the government involved in our health care? No, thank you. Get out of it. You get out of our lives. Take hurdles out of our way. Let us be productive. If you want to focus on something that is to benefit the people, is to benefit the collective, if you want to do something to benefit the bottom line of the state of Alaska, and I suggest you do it, and that is put pressure wherever you can on opening ANWR. Put pressure to bring it to bear wherever you possibly can to get a gas line. I talk to people, and this is Alaska Matters. This isn't Homer Matters or Chris Story Matters. This is, or the Assembly Matters. This is Alaska Matters. I've talked to people that literally break down in tears when they discuss the energy crises in Fairbanks, Alaska. The cost of heating your home in Fairbanks, Alaska is crippling. And we're worried not about increasing their availability to low-cost energy. We're worried about bringing them onto the government teat, to suckle at the teat of welfare and expand that. Shame on you. It's infuriating. I can't believe that we're not spending our time trying to make the economy better so we have less poor people, not more. Not expanding the poverty level, not expanding the number of people in Alaska that can qualify for Medicaid. We don't want them on Medicaid. We want them on their own plan. We want them building their own businesses and having their property rights restored. I'm spitting again. Ray Cronick, Dave, how much did you say is on the clock? I really wanted to get to what Ray Cronick had to say. So let's just listen in for a moment. This is from the city council meeting last night.
If you pass this ordinance, you will be imposing a property tax. Yes, a property tax. Your lawyer will disagree with that, but when 99.9% of the property owners...
So what Ray is saying, just to cut to the chase of it, is that in essence, the SAD, the Special Assessment District on the gas line here in Homer, he is equating to a property tax. Don't pay your assessment, they take your property. This is the net effect Ray is saying is a tax. I want to hear from you. What do you think? We know how many people opposed the gas line. I'd like to hear from you if you're in favor of it. What do you think? Email me, story@xyz.net, story@xyz.net. I still think there's a big controversy brewing here. I don't think it's settled. I don't think it's done. I don't believe, though, however, it needs to be as divisive an issue as it's become. And I'm wondering if we can find, here we go, it's starting to sound like a collectivist. Can we find common ground on this? I'll tell you what, I think maybe we can. I really appreciated what Ray Cronick had to say, and I just... Yeah, I mean, every time he comes down there to the council and testifies, I find myself going, I got to take a piece of that. Yeah, good job, Ray, good job. So thank you, Ray, for what you do. And I thought also Mayor Beth Wyeth should be noted as having delivered, I'm told, a very good speech at the Economic Forum. And so hopefully we'll have her on as a guest here in the not-too-distant future and discuss all of these issues. Thank you, Dave Webb, for being on my engineer and also agreeing to be on my bowling team. I appreciate that. Yes, sir. And I might have to roll myself down there to knock some of those pins down. But anyway, it's been a great program. I want to thank Representative Paul Seaton as well for being our guest. And if you've got any further questions or whatnot, I got to give away the answer. Got to give away the question. Last number is, well, you know who you are. I'll text you. But yeah, everybody said they wanted the city to take care of the sewage. We'll be back next week on Alaska Matters.